Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, excuse me. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I hope that when you catch up to this or it catches up to you, you have an opportunity to be grateful to God for something. And that's part of the topic, which brings us to the third Sunday of Advent. That's when we light the pink candle. Amazing thing that the institution, as staid and rigid as the Catholic Church, can find itself dressing its celebrants in pink and lighting a pink candle in place of the purple candles that we generally use in Advent and Lent. And that's because we're more than halfway through our 4 weeks of preparation for the coming of Christ into our hearts. Now, this candle, this third candle of Advent, it calls us to rejoice. In fact, it's the imperative in Latin. It's gaudete, which means we must rejoice. It's not just your usual, any old rejoice, have some joy in your life. No, it says like, hey, pay attention to what God is doing in your life. Now, this is kind of hard for us right now because of the mess that we find ourselves in globally in so many ways that are so important to all of us. But this is where we are called to the difference between happiness and joy. I'm talking about biblical joy. Robin Bazelin said this she's a Christian scholar, and she says that biblical joy is different than what most people think of as joy. It is not just a happy emotion that we either feel or don't feel. It is a state of being that finds its source in God. The Bible is clear that joy comes from God, Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 9 to 10. And our joy is a product of what God has done and continues to do. It is gladness and contentedness flowing out of the wellspring of God's faithfulness and mercy, quite independent of our present daily circumstances. She says that the psalmist writes, "Let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound and all that is in it. Let all creation rejoice before the Lord, for he comes. He comes to judge the earth, and he will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness." And so this is an anticipatory joy, as well as one that comes in our heart from our faith. I was also looking at on the internet, and I found a LaForce Gazette, and that is from LaForce Parish in Louisiana. And it was a newspaper that was started in October of 1965. It persists to this day, also digitally. And the author had this to say, and I was really happy for this because it corrected an error that I had. I always liked the saying, joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. And I used to attribute it to St. Isidore, who was a farmer. The reality is, it is a priest who was a philosopher and a scientist, Teilhard de Chardin. You might remember him. He had a lot to do with a joyful expectation of hope that God was steering the world in a way that would meet his expectations, even if the world didn't always meet ours. And that's how we are called to hope as people. So here's what we define joy as: the delight and fulfillment of the spirit rather than a sense of happiness over what circumstances we find ourselves in. It comes when we make peace with who we are, why we are here, and how we relate to God and others. This is this wonderful article from Louisiana. And that's something I'd like to leave you with. In the times when we are distracted by the knowledge that God is with us, because things are going wrong, that is exactly the time that we need to call on him for strength. That is exactly the time that we have to remember that our times are in his hands, who saith, "A whole I planned." So God is working out his will. In this Advent season, my prayer for you is that you would be able to have the kind of joy that comes from realizing, first of all, that wherever we are right now, we have one another. The other thing is that we know that we have progressed, like halfway through Advent, we're probably halfway through this pandemic. And crossing the halfway mark is something to rejoice in. It means that all that we have already suffered and all that has expired is behind us, and we continue to move forward now, even closer to our goal than when it first began. I hope that this Christmas gives you an opportunity to rejoice in the midst of everything that is going on. Two stories. One is, this parish has brought me a great deal of joy. You have brought me joy. In the midst of people who are hungry, our parishioners are bringing tons and tons of food. In the midst of the appeal that I made for people to donate for people's needs, I am getting letters each day with checks in them and saying, here is what I want you to give to. Feed the hungry, keep the people in their houses, help children stay in school, take care of other people's needs and with their rent. And that lifts me up more than I think any other time when mostly things are normal. The other thing is joy, biblical joy is an attitude too. And the story I tell is the one of two men in the Middle Ages. One is carrying a hod with bricks and mortar on it, and it's hot, the man's sweaty, and someone asks him, what are you doing? He says, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm breaking my back in this hot sun, and I'm not getting paid anything. It's an expectation, and I'm tired of it. And then another man came by, similarly laden down with the same hod full of bricks and mortar, and someone said, what are you doing? The man hefted the load a little bit to another shoulder. He gave a smile, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said, I'm building a cathedral. So keep up the good work, build the city of God, and God bless you.